today I'm here to talk about dogs, but not just any dog. No, today I'm here to talk about one dog in particular. Let me introduce you to my grandma's Chihuahua, a little guy named Pedro. Pedro's pretty special. He's the only dog I know that can stand at full height, which is for him 11 inches tops. He's the only dog I know that can stand at full height while touching the ground with his belly. Impressive, I know. In appearance, Pedro vaguely resembles a small cow. In terms of mental appearance or mental capacity, he's not much different. But sometimes, Pedro shows intelligence in surprising ways. One day we were at my grandma's house, and as often happens when at grandmother's house, we sat down for a bite to eat. But this time, something was different. Pedro hopped up on a chair and began to beg for food, pawing at the air with his front legs, kind of like a praying mantis. My grandma explained this was a new trick he had learned, and Pedro's no puppy. Right now he's about 60 or so in dog years, so you can probably guess where I'm going with this. That's right, you can teach an old dog new tricks. I know it sounds cheesy, but I'm from Wisconsin, so I get a free pass. Oh no. Hear me out. I believe it's important to be open to learning throughout our lifetimes. Just like Pedro, we should be ready to learn new tricks, especially if food is on the line. However, there are other reasons to learn too. In fact, I hope to show you today that learning can and should be an act of humility that glorifies God, and why that means we should be lifetime learners. I'd like to show you 3 parts of learning anything and how they can glorify God. Let's start by examining how learning can demonstrate humility. One easy way to remember this is as know your knowledge gap. Know your knowledge gap. The process of receiving knowledge requires our humility. We must be humble enough to recognize our shortcomings or gaps in our knowledge, aka knowledge gaps. In Finding Nemo, Nemo's a young fish who's kidnapped by a scuba diver. Marlin, Nemo's father and also a fish, swims off to rescue him and encounters a group of dangerous sharks along the way. But these are no ordinary dangerous sharks. These are dangerous vegan sharks. They're in a sort of Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but it's not for people trying to stay sober, it's for sharks trying to stay vegan. All the sharks share on how their fish abstinence is going, and Marlin is prompted to share on his assumed problems with fish consumption. I don't have a problem, he protests. What is the shark's response? Denial. See, while these sharks may have been slightly confused, they were onto something. The first step in addressing a problem is recognizing you have one. And the first step in addressing a knowledge gap is recognizing you have one. But we must be humble enough to admit that we aren't adequate as we are and have a desire to learn. To make this clearer, let's consider a hypothetical situation. For instance, if I didn't know that I couldn't sing, if I had absolutely no idea that I sound terrible when I try to sing Amazing Grace, would I ever try to learn how to sing? Probably not. So, if I don't recognize my knowledge gaps, then I definitely won't act on it. But, plot twist, this is not a hypothetical situation. I do know I can't sing, yet somehow I still don't want to learn how to sing. So, I've recognized my knowledge gap, but that must also translate into a desire to learn. When we learn at our best, we need to have a desire to learn. And this is one of the best ways to learn with humility. So step 1 was know your knowledge gap. Step 2 is you have to want it. I like to run. I'm actually on a cross-country team. Hopefully I'm better at running than I am at singing, but regardless, before every cross-country race, our coaches ask us, how bad do you want it? As in, how hard are we willing to push ourselves to succeed? As a cross-country team, we perform best when we're motivated. The same applies to learning. Not only do we need to recognize our knowledge gaps, but we also must have motive to fill the knowledge gaps. A motive I just don't have when it comes to singing. Depending on whether or not we want to learn, though, we can be active learners or passive learners. Passive learners are motivated to learn by a need to learn, not a desire. For instance, when I was younger, I needed to learn algebra, not because I wanted to, but because it was part of my curriculum, and I didn't want to fail 8th grade. Active learners, on the other hand, are push themselves to learn apart from any outside influence because they want to learn. If I had been a better student, I might have wanted to learn algebra because of the necessary skills it provides, but I didn't, and I'm still not sure what x equals. Unlike 8th grade me, though, we should be ready to learn actively. Taking initiative to engage and not just receive information actually helps us learn better. This scholarly journal, American Statistician, reports on a study from 2000. Two classes of engineering students taking the same course were compared. One was taught with, quote, traditional lecture-based methods, and the other class stressed group projects and cooperative learning-based methods, end quote, which emphasized active learning. Immediately after the class, and then 8 months later, both classes were given an exam. The results, well, neither class did better on the exam taken after 8 months compared to the exam taken immediately after the course, but students who actively learned remembered information better after 8 months than students who passively listened. So if you want it, if you go out of your way to learn, then you will learn better. Step 1, as I said before, was know your knowledge gap. Step 2 is you have to want it. That is, you have to want to fill your knowledge gap. What's step 3? Well, Nike and Shia LaBeouf might say, just do it. But it's not that easy. Motive doesn't always translate into action. For instance, I might want to learn how to sing, but never actually get around to doing it, which is kind of like not knowing that I cannot sing, so I never do anything to change that. In either situation, I won't actually learn. But step 3 might help you to remember to translate knowledge into motive and motive into action. It's called lights, cameras, action. Let me explain. See, lights are like step 1, shedding light on the realization that there are things we don't know. Step 2 is where cameras focus, just like a motive helps us to focus on our goal of learning. And action is doing something about it. And doing something about it helps us to glorify God. When we gain knowledge about the world around us and use it wisely, it gives us a better appreciation for its creator, not to mention skills that can be used from God. The best way to motivate ourselves to learn, to fulfill our goal, is to have a motive that matters to us. And, well, what's the best motive of all? The best motive is to glorify God. I know this might sound like a cop-out answer, but bear with me. Our intended purpose is to glorify God as caretakers of what He's given us, including knowledge, skills, and material possessions. As good stewards, we should ensure the gifts that God has given us aren't wasted. We should learn so we know how to put our gifts to use, ultimately glorifying God by fulfilling our purpose. Keep in mind, though, that motives and goals can look very different, but even if your goal is to master the sport of underwater hockey, you can still do it in a manner that glorifies God. Now, glorifying God isn't something that naturally comes to us, but we should train ourselves to do so. Not only do we experience true self-fulfillment, but we please God as well. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, "So whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do all to the glory of God." At the beginning of this speech, I mentioned my grandma's dog. Pedro points to a memorable lesson. You can and should teach an old dog new tricks. Just because we may have moved on from college or high school doesn't mean our education stops. In fact, if we are to be good stewards of God's creation, we should learn as much as we can about it, not for the sake of information, but to use that information wisely. So wherever we are in life, we should strive to learn in whatever capacity, because learning gives glory to God. Maybe I will learn how to sing after all.